Hello everyone, welcome to EPG Pathshala. In this module, we'll discuss the concept of linguistic variable and social stratification. At the heart of quantitative sociolinguistic inquiry is the concept of linguistic variable along which social stratification can be mapped and the directions of future language can be explored. Now let's try to distinguish the qualitative and quantitative approaches to sociolinguistic inquiry. The qualitative approach is located more in individual oral or written narratives, often doing data analysis in terms of conversational or discourse analysis. The focus of inquiry is more the content than the form of encoding. So, in qualitative approach of sociolinguistic inquiry, the focus is more the content than the form of encoding. But the moment one claims that there is an X that varies, that is, it could potentially have variable realizations, one enters the domain of quantification. So, given that a linguistic variable X could have variants such as X1, X2, X3, these variants may be associated with different social variables such as socioeconomic status, which includes education, occupation and income, and also other factors such as age and sex. Now let's discuss the concept of linguistic variable in detail. Consider the case of an immigrant Sikh speech community from Punjab finding its bearing in the city of Leeds in Yorkshire in UK. So as far as the children are concerned, their only possible exposure to Punjabi is at home and Gurudwara. In the school, street and playground, they are largely exposed to broad Yorkshire speech. In the classrooms, they may often be exposed to the standard British pronunciation, and it's not easy for them to abandon the Sikh identity which is encoded in their names, religion, culture, dress and language. Nor is it easy for them to survive in schools without learning Yorkshire English. So as a result, they evolve a kind of mixed Punjabi English code for intra-group communication and a distinct variety of English for interacting with their schoolmates. And this variety is marked by inputs from Indian English, Standard English and Yorkshire English. So this particular speech community, this Punjabi speech community which is settled in Yorkshire in UK has they have three different varieties which is used by them in their day-to-day speech. One is Indian English variety, and the next is Standard English variety, and then Yorkshire English. So this is universal, that is the influence of one language over the other is inevitable when two or more languages are in contact, or when a particular person of a particular speech community travels across to another place where a different language is spoken. They always try to interact, and the contact shows the influence of languages. Thus, all communicative acts are negotiated encounters, and in such encounters we consistently undertake a kind of pigeonization, projecting our images and patterns of speech and accommodating the needs and speech styles of our interlocutor. So, what is pigeonization? Pigeonization is a linguistic process that occurs when people who do not speak the same language comes into contact. It involves the simplification of the contacting language and exploitation of linguistic common denominators. So, precisely your speech style changes according to the person you are communicating to and depending on the speech context. Thus, all communicative acts are negotiated encounters, and as mentioned earlier, in such encounters, we consistently undertake a kind of pigeonization, projecting our images and patterns of speech and accommodating the needs and speech styles of our interlocutor. Moving on to linguistic variable. A linguistic variable in the phonological domain will always be defined by a set of words, that is by the different environments in which a given sound might occur, and the socially diagnostic dimensions its variance may be associated with. Now, going back to the Punjabi community in Yorkshire, uh, in in words like the sound t, the alveolar stop t in words like time, bed, and butter turned out to be a highly significant variable. Variable t is realized as aspirated alveolar stop, as it is also realized as an affricate, a retroflex, and it is realized as a glottal stop in the intervocalic and final positions. So now when we are looking into these variants of the variable t, the retroflex is associated with Indian English and Indianness, whereas the affricated t and the glottal stop are typically broad Yorkshire and are associated with children's assimilation to the local speech. Similarly, aspirated alveolar stop is associated with standard British English. So here the same speaker can have three different variants, or children in that particular speech community speak, they modify their speech according to different languages they are in contact with. One is Indian English, one is the standard English, and the other is the Yorkshire English variety. The patterns in the mixed code would show how children evolve new varieties of speech from a situation in apparent flux. So the language is constantly language is always in change. So and the pattern in the mixed code would show how children evolve new varieties of speech from a situation in apparent flux. Labov did a very interesting thing in his department store study. We have already discussed this department store study of Labov's in the previous modules as well. In his New York study, Labov confirmed the results of his study through rapid and anonymous interviews with employees of 3 large, well-stratified department stores. The data was easily transcribed in writing since only one variable was studied, which is post-vocalic r in the expression 4th floor. So, in order to study the pronunciation of r by the employees of 3 department stores, Labov asked questions which should elicit the lexical items 4th floor, containing the desired accent feature in the employee's speech. The interviewer would ask the salesperson a question which has an answer 4th floor. So, for example, he might ask, excuse me, where is the women's shoes available? And the casual spontaneous answer would be 4th floor. Now, what Labov did is he would lean forward and pretend like he didn't hear what the salesperson said to him before, and so that he'll ask the person to repeat what he just said, and then we get a more formal 4th floor. Each employee thus could pronounce post-vocalic r 4 times, twice each in 4th and floor. As we have already mentioned in the previous module, language must be seen on a continuum. At one end, we have the features that are largely governed by universal grammar, and on the other, we have a language which undergoes variation, changes, which is always in a constant flux, or which is a language which is fluid. So, on one end, we have universal grammar, and on the other end, we have a language which has variables. A language which has variation. We need a theoretical framework that would accommodate these two ends and also prove to be useful to address issues of language change and acquisition. So most linguists have worked with a stable homogeneous structure negating the heterogeneity inherent in language, and therefore there was a need to build a theory which would deal with structure and heterogeneity at the same time. So before a particular point in history, they were all linguists focused on the homogeneity and the homogeneous structure of a language, and whereas multiplicity of language or heterogeneity was not the concern. So now we need a different theoretical framework, or we need to build a theory which would deal with structure and heterogeneity at the same time. Weinreich, Labov and Herzog argued that a theory of language which focused exclusively on issues of idealized structure alone will tell us very little about nature, structure, acquisition and change of language. So therefore they proposed to have a theory that would accommodate variability in style and its social and psychological determinants. Such a theory may not be able to predict exact changes, but it would certainly help us formulate social and linguistic constraints on change. So, according to Weinreich, Labov and Herzog, they proposed to have a theory that would accommodate variability in style and its social and psychological determinants. And even though such a theory may not be able to predict the exact changes, it will in some way or the other help us to formulate social and linguistic constraints on change. According to them, variability is constitutive of linguistic competence. It was in the work of Fisher that which started with the domain of quantitative sociolinguistic variation. So he briefly showed that the social influences on linguistic variation were not random but systematic. So according to Fisher, any changes, social influences on linguistic variation is not random but it was very systematic. He also noted that those in power carefully guard the linguistic symbols associated with them, and that was a system that the masses kept trying to approximate to. So he already found that there is a difference in language, and that difference is also based on social stratification. So which is why he said those in power carefully guard the linguistic symbols associated with them, and those linguistic style or that speech was the one in which the masses or the common people kept trying to approximate to. Even though Fisher's focus was language change, he underlined the subtle ways in which language could be used for social discrimination. Fisher was examining the pronunciation of ing in the present participle endings as in washing, cooking, correcting, etc. He noticed that the ing as in the present participle endings could be realized as ing and in, ing, ing and in. He also noted that this variation was not random. Informal verbs like punching, swimming, chewing, etc. had more in pronunciation, and formal verbs such as correcting, reading, writing, visiting, etc. had more of an ing pronunciation. So he also showed that the choice between ing and the in variants appear to be related to sex, class, personality and mood. So when you say about personality of the speaker, it means that whether the speaker is aggressive or cooperative, and in terms of mood it is if the informant is relaxed or tensed. So he showed that the choice between ing and in variants appear to be related to sex, class, personality, mood and mood of the speaker, to the formality of conversation and to the specific verb spoken. Fisher also shows that boys tend to use more in than girls, and that differences are also related to personality type and mood. Again, when we say personality, it is aggressive versus cooperative, and when we say mood, it's tensed versus relaxed. Fisher, as well as many other scholars of language variation, also found that in was associated with masculinity, and that is a realization of ing as in was associated with masculinity and lower middle class behavior. This was indeed a solid basis for the landmark work of Labov. Labov's exploratory study on language change started in 1961. So he noticed that vowel sounds were produced variably in Martha's Vineyard. Labov noted that there was a significant variation in the pronunciation of the vowel sound ow and I, as in ow as in mouse and I as in mice, across different age groups. So it was basically the assertion of local identities that was taking place through language linguistic means. So Martha's Vineyard is an island near east coast of United States of America, and it has a permanent population of only about 6,000. Labov interviewed 69 people, each from different age, ethnic and social groups, as to get a representative sample. So rather than getting his informants to read simple word list, Labov used an interview technique to subtly encourage the participants to say the words containing the vowels which he wished to study. By using this research method, Labov tried to avoid demand characteristics and make the conversation as natural as possible, so that the participants didn't necessarily know what Labov was looking for. So now most of Labov's study is important in the sense that he shows how to elicit the vernacular or the most casual speech. So here in in the study of Martha's Vineyard, rather than getting his informants to read simple word list, Labov used an interview technique to subtly encourage the participants to say the words containing vowels which he wished to study. So if you ask the informants to read out a word list, they get more conscious, and a more careful or a more formal speech is what is delivered by them. So by using this technique, this research method, Labov tried to avoid certain demand characteristics and make the conversation as natural as possible, so as to get the vernacular or the most casual speech. And so the important factor was the informants, they didn't know what was Labov looking for, so they couldn't modify that particular sound which Labov was looking for. Labov found that the pronunciation of certain vowel sounds were subtly changing from standard American pronunciation, and noted that locals had a tendency to pronounce these diphthongs with a more central point. The fisherman community centralizes ow and I more than any other occupational group. So this was done subconsciously in order to establish and identify themselves as vineyarders, as an independent social group, rejecting the norms of mainland America, which was bought over by the summer holiday makers. So they wanted to stand distinct, their community specifically wanted to stand distinct from the outsiders, and which is why this modification in their speech took place. So he noticed that people of the age group 30 to 60 years tend to centralize diphthongs more than younger or older people. This was a move from standard American norms emerged, particularly in the younger speakers of this bracket between the age of 31 to 45 towards a pronunciation associated with the fishermen. That is, people belonging to the age group 31 to 45 seem to move away from the standard pronunciation of these vowel sounds to the more conservative pronunciation of vineyarders. So they moved away from the standard American English pronunciation to that of a more conservative vineyarders speech. A big factor to consider when discussing the cause of these differences in pronunciation in Martha's Vineyard is largely down to the attitude of its inhabitants. So precisely as we have already mentioned, what happens here is the assertion of local identities was taking place through linguistic means. So they specified their identity as fishermen community through their speech. We have already mentioned Leboeuf's New York department store study in the previous modules and even in this module also. So here what Leboeuf tried to see is a variable, look at the pronunciation of variable R in different community, different socio-economic community. The pattern of R distribution was consistent in the three stores in terms of linguistic environment, style and socio-economic status of the employees. The sound R appeared more frequently in the final as opposed to the post-vocalic position. It is also sensitive to style, that is R appeared more frequently in the formal style than casual, indicating that speakers regarded it as a norm. So in Leboeuf's experimental study in the New York department store, what he found out is the distribution of R was consistent, and it was based on a person's linguistic environment, speech style and socio-economic status. So here what he said is the sound R appeared more frequently in the final as opposed to the post-vocalic position. And it is also sensitive to style, as in R appeared more frequently in formal style than the casual, indicating the speakers regarded it as a norm. So when he asked first where the women's shoes are available, that was an informal speech that came out of the informant. So the realization of R was more frequent in the formal when in the formal style, as in when Leboeuf asked to repeat the answer again for him. Next we will look into the Lower East Side study conducted by Leboeuf. Though extremely important, Leboeuf's department store study had major limitations in terms of sampling and data. For the Lower East study, Leboeuf divided the stylistic continuum into 5 distinct points. Now, according to Leboeuf, styles may be ordered along a single dimension measured by the amount of attention paid to the speech. And I hope by now you have an idea about what a stylistic continuum is. We have already discussed the concept of stylistic continuum in the previous module. As we discussed, most formal speech can be elicited through a set of carefully planned minimal pairs that would focus on the variables that may be socio-linguistically diagnostic. Now, slightly less formal speech may be elicited through a list of words. A reading passage exercise may be the next in degree of informality. And it was in the 4th variety of style that one moved towards informality in, which is the careful speech. And then comes the casual speech, which is least formal or which is least conscious. Leboeuf had rich data from the Lower East Side available to him. And of this 988, Leboeuf very carefully selected a sample of 122 informants, which included representative samples of Negroes, Orthodox and conservative Jewish people, Catholic and Protestants. So there were several refusals, and refusals are also important in case of data elicitation, because refusals can introduce serious bias into the study, and every effort needs to be made to track the non-respondent who form a part of the sample. Leboeuf made a significant innovation in interviewing these people and eliciting linguistic data on the target variables through what he calls television interview. So people who did not initially wanted to say a word talked for over 15 minutes about the television programs. And in each of the ethnic groups, Leboeuf further divided the informants on a 10-point socioeconomic index based on their education, occupation and income. He could isolate 6 socio-linguistically stratified socio-economic groups ranging from the lowest upper classes to lower middle class and upper middle class. Coming back to Leboeuf's study on social stratification of R, there is both class and stylistic variation. The incidence of realization of R or R-full pronunciation increases as one moves from the informal to formal style, suggesting that the R-full pronunciation is associated with prestige and conscious speech. There is also a clear social stratification based on the frequency of R or R. The lower and upper class are sharply distinguished. That is, the lower classes hardly use R in their normal casual speech, whereas R-full pronunciation or the realization of R in the speech was normal for the middle class, particularly in formal styles. Precisely, the pronunciation of R depended on social class membership of the employees. That is, those with higher socioeconomic status pronounced R more frequently than those of the lower socioeconomic status. In all stores, R appeared more frequently in the final as opposed to the postvocalic position, and it appeared more frequently in the formal style than casual, indicating that speakers regarded it as a norm. And it also showed a systematic variation in terms of race and class. As we discussed, Leboeuf inaugurated and firmly established the field of sociolinguistics. It was for the first time that one witnessed a hope for integrating the systematic and fluid aspects of linguistic behavior, that is the static, the universal grammar and the fluid nature of language. Leboeuf also showed us various ways for analyzing language variation through his studies in Martha's Vineyard, New York department stores and Lower East Side study. So in this module we also discussed how the study of language variation in its social context must become an integral part of understanding the structure of language. Thank you.